Fog used to upset you. View of Mont Blanc?" Nellie stammered. Everyone was aware that she and Denry had never been in Switzerland before, and that their marriage was indeed less than a month old. "You misunderstood me," said Denry gruffly. "My wife hasn't been to Geneva." "Oh!" drawled Captain Deverax. His "Oh!" contained so much of insinuation, disdain, and lofty amusement that Denry blushed, and when Nellie saw her husband's cheek she blushed in competition, and defeated him easily. It was felt that either Denry had been romancing to the Captain, or that he had been married before, unknown to his Nellie, and had been "carrying on" at Geneva. The situation, although it dissolved of itself in a brief space, was awkward. It discredited the Hôtel Beau Site. It was in the nature of a repulse for the Hôtel Beau Site, franc a day cheaper than the Métropole, and of a triumph for the popinjay. The fault was utterly Denry's. Yet he said to himself: "I'll be even with that chap." On the drive home he was silent. The theme of conversation in the sleighs, which did not contain the Countess, was that the Captain had flirted tremendously with the Countess, and that it amounted to an affair. 4. Captain Deverax was equally salient in the department of sports. There was a fair sheet of ice, obtained by cutting into the side of the mountain, and a very good tobogganing track, about half a mile in length and full of fine curves, common to the two hotels. Denry's predilection was for the track. He would lie on his stomach on the little contrivance which the Swiss call a luge, and which consists of naught but 3 bits of wood and 2 steel clad runners, and would course down the perilous curves at 20 miles an hour. Until the Captain came this was regarded as dashing, because most people were content to sit on the luge and travel legs foremost instead of head foremost. But the Captain, after a few eights on the ice, intimated that for the rest no sport was true sport save the sport of ski running. He allowed it to be understood that luges were for infants. He had brought his skis, and these instruments of locomotion, some 6 feet in length, made a sensation among the inexperienced. For when he had strapped them to his feet, the Captain, while stating candidly that his skill was as nothing to that of the Swedish professionals at St Moritz, could assuredly slide over snow in a manner prodigious and beautiful. And he was exquisitely clothed for the part. His knickerbockers, in the elegance of their lines, were the delight of beholders. Skiing became the rage. Even Nellie insisted on hiring a pair, and the pronunciation of the word "ski" aroused long discussions and was never settled by anybody. The Captain said "ski," but he did not object to "she," which was said to be the more strictly correct by a lady who knew someone who had been to Norway. People with no shame and no feeling for correctness said brazenly "sky." Denry, whom nothing could induce to desert his luge, said that obviously "ski" could only spell "planks," and thanks to his inspiration this version was adopted by the majority. On the second day of Nellie's struggle with her skis she had more success than she either anticipated or desired. She had been making experiments at the summit of the track, slithering about, falling, and being restored to uprightness by as many persons as happened to be near. Skis seemed to her the most ungovernable and least practical means of travel that the madness of man had ever concocted. Skates were well behaved old horses compared to these long untamed fiends, and a luge was like a tricycle. Then suddenly a friendly starting push drove her a yard or two, and she glided past the level on to the first imperceptible slope of the track. By some hazard her 2 planks were exactly parallel, as they ought to be, and she glided forward miraculously, and people heard her say "How lovely!" and then people heard her say "Oh! Oh!" for her pace was increasing, and she dared not strike her pole into the ground. She had, in fact, no control whatever over those 2 planks to which her feet were strapped. She might have been Mazeppa and they mustangs. She could not even fall. So she fled down the preliminary straight of the track, and ecstatic spectators cried: "Look how well Mrs Machin is doing!" Mrs Machin would have given all her furs to be anywhere off those planks. On the adjacent fields of glittering snow the Captain had been giving his adored Countess a lesson in the use of skis, and they stood together, the Countess somewhat insecure, by the side of the track at its first curve. Nellie, dumb with excitement and amazement, swept towards them. "Look out!" cried the Captain. In vain. He might himself perhaps have escaped, but he could not abandon his Countess in the moment of peril, and the Countess could only move after much thought and many efforts, being scarce more advanced than Nellie. Nellie's wilful planks quite ignored the curve, and, as it were afloat on them, she charged off the track and into the Captain and the Countess. The impact was tremendous. 6 skis waved like semaphores in the air. Then all was still. Then, as the beholders hastened to the scene of the disaster, the Countess laughed, and Nellie laughed. The laugh of the Captain was not heard. The sole casualty was a wound, about a foot long, in the hinterland of the Captain's unique knickerbockers; and as threads of that beautiful check pattern were afterwards found attached to the wheel of Nellie's pole, the cause of the wound was indisputable, and the Captain departed home, chiefly backwards, but with great rapidity. In the afternoon Denry went down to Montreux, and returned with an opal bracelet which Nellie wore at dinner. "Oh, what a ripping bracelet!" said a girl. "Yes," said Nellie. "My husband gave it me only to day." "I suppose it's your birthday or something?" the inquisitive girl ventured. "No," said Nellie. "How nice of him!" said the girl. The next day Captain Deverax appeared in riding breeches. They were not correct for ski running, but they were the best he could do. He visited a tailor's in Montreux. 5. The Countess Ruhl had a large sleigh of her own, also a horse; both were hired from Montreux. In this vehicle, sometimes alone, sometimes with a male servant, she would drive at Russian speed over the undulating mountain roads, and for such expeditions she always wore a large red cloak with a hood. Often she was thus seen, in the afternoon. The scarlet made a bright moving patch on the vast expanses of snow. Once, at some distance from the village, 2 tale tellers observed a man on skis careering in the neighbourhood of the sleigh. It was Captain Deverax. The flirtation, therefore, was growing warmer and warmer. The hotels hummed with the tidings of it. But the Countess never said anything, nor could anything be extracted from her by even the most experienced gossips. She was an agreeable but a mysterious woman, as befitted a Russian Countess. Again and again were she and the Captain seen together afar off in the landscape. Certainly it was a novelty in flirtations. People wondered what might happen between the two at the fancy dress ball which the Hôtel Beau Site was to give in return for the hospitality of the Hôtel Métropole. The ball was offered, not in love, but in emulation, almost in hate, for the jealousy displayed by the Beau Site against the increasing insolence of the Métropole had become acute. The airs of the Captain and his lieges, the Clutterbuck party, had reached the limit of the Beau Site's endurance. The Métropole seemed to take it for granted that the Captain would lead the cotillion at the Beau Site's ball, as it had led it at the Métropole's. And then, on the very afternoon of the ball, the Countess received a telegram, it was said from St. Petersburg, which necessitated her instant departure; and she went, in an hour, down to Montreux by the funicular railway, and was lost to the Beau Site. This was a blow to the prestige of the Beau Site, for the Countess was its chief star, and moreover much loved by her fellow guests, despite her curious weakness for the popinjay and the mystery of her outings with him. In the stables Denry saw the Countess's hired sleigh and horse, and in the sleigh her glowing red cloak, and he had one of his ideas, which he executed, although snow was beginning to fall. In 10 minutes he and Nellie were driving forth, and Nellie, in the red cloak, held the reins. Denry, in a coachman's furs, sat behind. They whirled past the Hôtel Métropole, and shortly afterwards, on the wild road towards Attalens, Denry saw a pair of skis scudding as quickly as skis can scud in their rear. It was astonishing how the sleigh, with all the merry jingle of its bells, kept that pair of skis at a distance of about 100 yards. It seemed to invite the skis to overtake it, and then to regret the invitation and flee further. Up the hills it would crawl, for the skis climbed slowly.